Frank Sinatra thought his name opened every door in America. He was wrong. In Harlem, even the chairman of the board needed permission, and the man who controlled those permissions was about to teach Sinatra a lesson he would never forget. It was March 1955. Sinatra was at the peak of his power. Fresh off his Academy Award win for From Here to Eternity, he commanded respect from Hollywood to Las Vegas. His voice could fill any venue. His connections reached the highest levels of entertainment, politics, and organized crime. But there was one neighborhood in New York where none of that mattered, where being Frank Sinatra meant nothing without the approval of one man. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson controlled Harlem like a shadow king. Every nightclub, every numbers runner, every after-hours joint operated under his watchful eye. He didn't seek publicity. He didn't need headlines. His power came from something far more valuable than fame, respect earned through decades of protecting his community. The collision between these two worlds began with a phone call that should never have been made. March 15, 1955, the Cotton Club on 142nd Street, not the famous downtown venue that catered to white audiences, but the real Cotton Club, where Harlem's elite gathered to hear the best jazz in the city. The club's owner, Vinnie Morrison, a nervous man who sweated through expensive suits, received a call that made his hands shake. "Mr. Morrison, this is Frank Sinatra's manager. Mr. Sinatra wants to perform at your establishment next Friday night. Private show, very exclusive. We're prepared to pay handsomely." Morrison's mouth went dry. Frank Sinatra wanted to perform at his club. The biggest star in America wanted to grace his stage. The prestige alone would make the Cotton Club legendary. But there was a problem, a big problem. Every major booking in Harlem required approval from one man, and Morrison hadn't asked for it. I need to make some calls," Morrison stammered. "No calls necessary," the manager replied smoothly. "Mr. Sinatra has performed for presidents. This is just a formality. We'll handle all the arrangements." Morrison should have hung up, should have followed the protocol that had kept his club operating peacefully for 8 years. Instead, he saw dollar signs and headlines. He saw his name in the newspapers alongside Sinatra's. He forgot the most important rule in Harlem: nothing happens without Bumpy Johnson's blessing. "Yes," Morrison said, "we'll do it." The announcement hit the newspapers 2 days later. Sinatra to perform intimate show in Harlem. The story spread through New York's entertainment circles like wildfire. Celebrities, politicians, and high society figures scrambled for tickets. The Cotton Club received hundreds of calls from people desperate to attend what was being billed as the entertainment event of the year. But in a quiet office above Small's Paradise on 135th Street, Bumpy Johnson read the newspaper article with growing irritation. He sat behind a modest wooden desk, wearing his trademark dark suit and thin tie. At 48, his hair was graying at the temples, but his eyes remained sharp, calculating. He read the article twice, then set the newspaper down and reached for his phone. "Get me Vinnie Morrison," he said quietly. 20 minutes later, Morrison sat across from Bumpy in that same office. His expensive suit was already soaked with sweat despite the cool March air. He clutched his hat in his hands, avoiding eye contact with the man who could shut down his business with a single word. "Vinnie," Bumpy said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Tell me about this Sinatra show." Morrison's voice cracked. It's just one night, Mr. Johnson. Private show. Very respectable crowd." "Respectable crowd," Bumpy repeated slowly. "And you cleared this with me when?" Morrison's shoulders sagged. I thought, with his reputation." "You thought what, Vinnie? That Frank Sinatra's reputation trumps the way we do business in Harlem?" Bumpy leaned forward. "You thought that because some Italian crooner from Hoboken wants to slum it uptown, the rules don't apply?" "No, sir, that's not. I made a mistake." Bumpy stood and walked to the window overlooking 135th Street. Below, the afternoon crowd moved with purpose. Working people heading home, children playing on stoops, old men gathered around checkerboards. This was his world. These were his people. And nobody, not even Frank Sinatra, disrespected that world without consequences. "Yes, you did make a mistake, Vinnie. Now the question is, how do we fix it?" Morrison shifted nervously. "I could cancel the show, make excuses, say there was a scheduling conflict." Bumpy turned from the window. "Cancel the biggest entertainment story of the month? Make Frank Sinatra look like a fool? You think that's smart?" "I don't know what else to do." Bumpy returned to his desk and sat down. "You're going to do exactly what you promised. Host the show. Give Sinatra his stage. But first, He's going to come see me. He's going to ask permission properly. He's going to show respect. And he's going to understand that in Harlem, his name means nothing without my approval. Morrison's face went pale. You want me to tell Frank Sinatra he needs to get permission from me? Yes, that's exactly what I want you to tell him. Mr. Johnson, with all due respect, he's Frank Sinatra. He's not going to... Bumpy's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Vinny, let me explain something to you. I don't care if he's Frank Sinatra, the Pope, or the President of the United States. This is Harlem. These are my streets, my clubs, my people, and nobody performs in my neighborhood without showing proper respect. Nobody. Morrison left that office knowing his comfortable relationship with both sides was over. He had to choose between disappointing Frank Sinatra or defying Bumpy Johnson. In Harlem, that wasn't really a choice at all. The call to Sinatra's people came that evening. Morrison's voice shook as he explained the situation to the Star's manager, George Evans, a sharp-dressed man who had built careers and destroyed enemies with equal efficiency. What do you mean he needs approval? Evans snapped. Frank Sinatra doesn't need approval from some local hood. We've got contracts. We've got advertisements. The show is sold out. Mr. Evans, you don't understand. Bumpy Johnson isn't just some local hood. He runs Harlem, every club, every venue, everything. If he doesn't approve, are you threatening us? I'm trying to save us. Mr. Johnson wants to meet with Mr. Sinatra personally tomorrow evening. It's not negotiable. The line went silent for 30 seconds. Evans was calculating, weighing options. Frank Sinatra's career had survived scandals, mob connections, and political controversies. But Harlem wasn't Las Vegas or Hollywood. Harlem had its own rules, its own power structure. And from everything Evans had heard about Bumpy Johnson, this wasn't a man who bluffed. Fine. Where and when? The meeting was set for 8 p.m. the following night at Chez's restaurant on Lenox Avenue. Small, intimate, family-owned. The kind of place where serious conversations happened away from prying eyes and eavesdropping reporters. Frank Sinatra arrived 10 minutes early, which was unusual for a man famous for keeping everyone waiting. He wore a charcoal gray suit with a white shirt and narrow black tie, his signature look. At 39, he was lean, sharp-featured, and carried himself with the confidence of a man who had conquered multiple worlds. But as he walked into Chez's, something was different. The usual swagger was subdued. The famous smile was absent. Bumpy Johnson was already seated at a corner table, his back to the wall, facing the entrance. He wore his usual dark suit, no flashy jewelry, no ostentation. He looked like a businessman, which in many ways he was, the most successful businessman in Harlem. Sinatra approached the table alone. His usual entourage of managers, bodyguards, and hangers-on had been left outside. This was to be a conversation between two men, nothing more. Mr. Johnson, Sinatra said, extending his hand. Frank Sinatra, thank you for agreeing to meet. Bumpy looked at the extended hand for a moment before standing and shaking it firmly. Sit down, Mr. Sinatra. Can I offer you something to drink? Whiskey. Neat. Bumpy signaled the waiter, who brought 2 glasses of bourbon without being asked. The restaurant's other patrons pretended not to notice the 2 men in the corner, but everyone knew who they were. Word would spread through Harlem by morning. Frank Sinatra had come to pay his respects. So, Bumpy said after they were seated, you want to perform in my neighborhood? Yes, sir. The Cotton Club. One night. Private show for about 200 people. And you thought you could just announce this without talking to me first? Sinatra shifted slightly in his chair. I didn't know there was a protocol. In Las Vegas, in Hollywood, we just booked the venue and... This isn't Las Vegas, Mr. Sinatra. This isn't Hollywood. This is Harlem. And in Harlem, respect isn't just expected, it's required. The 2 men studied each other across the table. Sinatra had dealt with powerful men before. Studio heads who could end careers with a phone call, mob bosses who demanded tribute and loyalty, politicians who traded favors like poker chips. But Bumpy Johnson was different. There was no bluster, no intimidation tactics, no theatrical displays of power, just quiet, absolute certainty. I meant no disrespect, Mr. Johnson. I genuinely didn't know. Now you do. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Sinatra took a sip of his bourbon. What would you like me to do? I'd like you to understand something. Harlem isn't a tourist attraction. It's not a place where rich white folks come to see how the other half lives. It's a community, my community. The people who live here, who work here, who built their lives here, they deserve respect. They deserve to be treated as more than entertainment for people who will never understand their struggles. I understand. Do you? Because from where I sit, it looks like Frank Sinatra saw an opportunity to do something edgy, something different. Play in Harlem, get some headlines, show how progressive you are, but you never bothered to ask what the community gets out of it. Sinatra set down his glass. What would you want the community to get out of it? Bumpy smiled for the first time since Sinatra had arrived. Now that's the right question. For the next 30 minutes, they talked. Not about the show, not about permissions or protocols, but about Harlem. About the families struggling to pay rent while working 2 jobs, about the kids who needed scholarships to stay in school, about the small businesses that couldn't get loans from downtown banks, about the community center that needed a new roof and the church that was trying to buy instruments for its youth choir. Here's what's going to happen, Mr. Sinatra, Bumpy finally said. You're going to do your show, one night at the Cotton Club, but it's not going to be a private show for 200 rich folks. It's going to be a benefit concert. Tickets will be sold to anyone who wants to attend, at prices people in this neighborhood can afford, and every penny of profit goes to community programs. Sinatra nodded slowly. That's actually a good idea. It's the only idea, because I'm not interested in helping you add another story to your legend. I'm interested in helping my people. And if I refuse? Bumpy's expression didn't change. Then you don't perform in Harlem, not at the Cotton Club, not anywhere else. Your people can try to fight it, but they'll lose. And you'll learn that there are some places in America where being Frank Sinatra doesn't make you king. The weight of those words settled between them. Sinatra had built his career on his voice, his charisma, and his ability to navigate the complex world of entertainment and organized crime. But he recognized something in Bumpy Johnson that he rarely encountered, moral authority backed by real power. You've got a deal, Sinatra said. They shook hands again, and this time it felt different. Not like a business transaction, but like the beginning of an understanding between 2 men who operated by different codes, but shared a respect for straight dealing. The show that took place 3 nights later was unlike anything Frank Sinatra had ever done. The Cotton Club was packed with a mixed crowd. Harlem residents who had scraped together money for tickets, jazz musicians, local business owners, and yes, some celebrities who had paid premium prices for the privilege of attending. Sinatra performed for 2 hours, his voice in perfect form, his connection to the audience deeper than usual. But the real revelation came after the show. Sinatra had stayed afterwards, something he rarely did. He sat at the bar talking with Bumpy Johnson and several community leaders about the needs of the neighborhood. The conversation went on until nearly 3 a.m., covering everything from housing discrimination to educational opportunities to police relations. You know what surprised me most about tonight? Sinatra said as the evening wound down. What's that? Bumpy asked. The audience. They weren't just listening to the music. They were hearing it, really hearing it. In Vegas, in Hollywood, sometimes I feel like I'm just background noise for people who are there to be seen. Tonight, I felt like I was actually communicating with people who understood what the songs meant. Bumpy nodded. That's because tonight, you weren't performing for people who bought tickets to see Frank Sinatra. You were performing for people who bought tickets to hear music. I'd like to do this again, Sinatra said. We'll see. Over the following months, Frank Sinatra made several quiet visits to Harlem. Not for shows, not for publicity, just to check on the community programs his benefit concert had funded. He established a scholarship fund for local students and made anonymous donations to several churches and community centers. But he also learned a hard lesson about assuming his fame granted him automatic access anywhere he wanted to go. 6 months after the Cotton Club show, Sinatra's people contacted Vincent Morrison about booking another performance. This time, they went through proper channels, reaching out to Bumpy Johnson's office first. But Bumpy declined the request. Why? Sinatra asked when he called personally. Because you're starting to enjoy this too much, Bumpy said. You're beginning to think of Harlem as your personal charitable project. That's not respect, Mr. Sinatra. That's something else entirely. The rejection stung, but Sinatra understood the message. Harlem wasn't a place where he could buy goodwill with benefit concerts and donations. It was a community with its own dignity, its own leadership, and its own standards for who belonged and who didn't. Years later, when Sinatra was asked about his relationship with Bumpy Johnson, he said, "I learned more about power from one conversation with that man than I did from decades in Hollywood and Las Vegas." Real power isn't about what you can take, it's about what you choose to give and when you choose to give it. The story of Frank Sinatra's night in Harlem became part of the legend surrounding both men. For Sinatra, it was a reminder that fame had limits and respect had to be earned in every room he entered. For Bumpy Johnson, it was another example of how he protected his community not just from threats, but from those who would exploit it, even with the best of intentions. The lesson echoed through Harlem for years afterward. No matter how famous you are, no matter how much money you have, no matter how many powerful friends you claim, in this neighborhood, you play by Bumpy Johnson's rules, and those rules always put the community first. In the end, Frank Sinatra got his favor. He got to perform in Harlem, to connect with an audience that truly appreciated his art, and to contribute to a community he had never understood before. But he also got something he hadn't expected, a lesson in humility from a man who wielded power with more wisdom than anyone else he had ever met. The chairman of the board had been schooled by the King of Harlem, and both men were better for it.